As a multicultural person, I find myself questioning my cultural background a lot. Since I'm not fully Indian or Swedish, I find myself asking myself where I'm actually from. But I feel like I'm not the only one who goes through this. I have many friends who are also born and raised in the US, but have parents from different parts of the world. But for most of them, they only have two identities, or two cultures to deal with. For me, it's kind of complicated. Not only was I born and raised in Sweden, my parents are Indian, and I live in the US. And whenever people ask me where I'm from, I usually just say Sweden, because it's not like I've ever lived in India, and I don't even know how to speak my mother tongue properly, which, by the way, is Telugu, and it's spoken in the southern part of India. So when people ask me questions like that, I end up questioning myself about where do I actually belong? So let me actually tell you a short story. If you didn't know, Sweden is a very small country located in the northern part of Europe. And the population is very low. So finding Indian people is very, very rare. So when my parents finally moved, they finally made friends with some Indian people where they wanted my sister and I to get more exposure to our heritage and culture. And if you didn't know, Indian culture is very different and very large. So as a young kid, my sister and I had a hard time understanding what's going on. So whenever we went to an event, we would bother our mom every 3 seconds about what's going on. And even though it was hard to understand, I really felt like I enjoyed dressing up and embracing our beautiful heritage. But this had me questioning my cultural identity even more. You see, a few weeks ago, I didn't even know what that phrase meant until I came across this very interesting article from the University of Chicago, where they described the questioning of cultural identity as a feeling of not fitting in a community that you live in. And I feel like this has an impact on anybody who just moved from different countries and who lives in a community with multiple cultures. Even though I grew up in Sweden, I came from a fairly strict Indian household, where we do everything that a normal Indian person would go through, from taking off our shoes when entering the house to watching Bollywood movies and eating almonds before a huge exam. And we still do those things today. In fact, we have a tradition in our house where we watch at least one Indian movie a week, so we still get that exposure. And thanks to that, my level of understanding my mother tongue has improved. Now I can say that I know how to say things more than sit and stand in my mother tongue. But even though I was doing this all at home, there was no way for me to expose the Indian side of me outside of my house. I went to an international school, which meant that the languages that I was predominantly learning in was Swedish and English. And that meant that I had friends from all the different parts of the world, like Cameroon, Romania, Sweden, etc. And whatever we did was heavily influenced by Western countries, so mainly the US and sometimes the UK. So for fun, we would watch the Kardashians and make fun of them. But again, there was no way for me to expose the Indian side of me. So basically, even though I grew up in a place with multiple cultures, I felt like I didn't really belong to one. And now that I moved to the US, I got introduced to another culture, and it's really different from Sweden. But I'm getting used to it. It's almost been a year since I moved here, and I guess high school is helping me a lot because this is the place for self-development and growing and finding what makes me happy. But sometimes I get questions like, do I belong here? Why am I here? Should I just move back to Sweden because I know how things work there? And then sometimes I get questions about my future. Like, do I want my kids to go through what I'm going through since, their parents are from different parts of the world? But then I think about it again, and then I'm like, why would I even be questioning myself like this? There has to be a solution to stop feeling weird and just be happy. Now, it's not like I found a solution or anything, but after doing a lot of research and watching a lot of TED Talks, I came across this concept called intergroup marginalization. So this is a concept that was developed in 2007 by a group of researchers called Castillo, and they described it as the perceived rejection from one's heritage or culture group due to adopting a new culture in ways that are deemed as a threat to the group's social identity. And this may, again, have an effect on anyone who literally just moved between countries or who lives in a community with multiple cultures. So, after researching this, I have discovered some other points as well. So even though this is real, most of it is in a person's anxiety and perceptions about what other people think about them. And here is a quote from their research paper itself. Large parts of marginalization isn't the marginalization itself, but rather the person's anxieties. So after researching this, I decided to implement it in my own life. So whenever people ask me where I'm from, I decided to just let go and be myself, instead of just coming up with an answer and just explaining myself to them. Because they don't know what I've been through, and I don't need to prove myself to everyone that I meet. It's their choice to believe me or not. So basically what I'm trying to say is you have to develop the courage of being disliked. And it's okay to be different, and it's okay to be from different cultures. But what's not okay is to drown yourself in your own thoughts before other people do so. Thank you.